And President Trump is calling on Republicans to pass new voting restrictions. In a social media post, the president's calling for voters to show ID and proof of citizenship and for an end to mail-in ballots. Meanwhile, the administration's facing new questions on why the director of national intelligence was at the FBI raid on a Georgia elections office. White House correspondent Karen Travers is here for more on that. Karen, Tulsi Gabbard told Congress she was in Georgia at the president's request. Now, the president says it was Attorney General Pam Bondi who wanted her there. How's Bondi responding to that? And what's the latest on the president's calls to federalize elections?
Yeah, he continues to make those calls to federalize elections. The White House says he's talking about legislation that you just had there on screen that would require voters to have ID. It would require newly registered voters to show proof of citizenship. The president also in that social media post was calling for an end to mail-in ballots, but some exceptions to that. But the president does continue to say that he wants to see the federal government get involved in vote counting, which has nothing to do with that piece of legislation. So that's one part of this issue. The president repeatedly pushing that and also repeating his false claims about the 2020 election. Then you have that raid in Fulton County, Georgia last week at the elections office and the appearance there at that raid by the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. The president said this week that suggesting that it was foreign election interference, and that's why she is down there, but then suggested that it was the Attorney General who directed her to be there, despite, as you noted, Gabbard saying she was there at the request of the president. We heard from Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, this morning, and here's what she had to say about this.
It's interesting because Gabbard and I are inseparable. We are constantly together, as are the people behind us. We constantly talk. We collaborate as a cabinet. We're all extremely close, know what each other, what we're doing at all times, pretty much, to keep not only our country safe, but our world safe. And she was down there with Deputy Director Andrew Bailey of the FBI. And I'm not going to talk about any other details of that matter right now because Georgia is a very important issue to us. No. She was there. We're inseparable. That's all I'll say.
We often hear the Attorney General emphasize that collaboration between her department and other departments and agencies. But Diane, questions here are about why the Director of National Intelligence would be involved in something that certainly seems like a domestic issue. But the president this week, as I said, suggesting that this was an investigation into foreign election interference. And that's why they had to take these ballots and some of the election data, which, of course, now Fulton County election officials are fighting them in court to get back.
And Karen, 2 weeks ago, President Trump promised details on a framework deal to take control of Greenland in 2 weeks. So any updates on that?
2 weeks. We have heard that phrase so many times from this president, whether it was a deadline for the Russia and Ukraine peace agreement or other policy issues. So no, there is no update from the White House on this or from the president. But, you go back 2 weeks and look at what was happening in Davos at that time, where the president was making those threats about the United States potentially using military force to take Greenland, then having meetings with European officials, including the NATO Secretary General, and coming out and saying, we have a deal, and we will talk more about that deal in 2 weeks. No details about it, but the president hasn't talked about this in 2 weeks. So the question is it off the table at this point, or has it died down? Diane, they did say that there were going to be high-level talks. The vice president, the secretary of state would be leading with officials in Europe to talk about the United States and the presence there. Those conversations, we are told, would be ongoing.
All right, Karen Travers, thank you.